Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into something really interesting. We're tackling declining birth rates today. But through a fascinating lens, let me tell you, we're looking at a Substack article called, get this, Low Birth Rates and Our Selfish Brains. And yeah, that title's a bit provocative, but it gets to the heart of this idea that deep down, our brains are still kind of wired for what the author calls transactional relationships. Now, before anyone gets the wrong idea, it's not about being like cold or uncaring. It's more about how our brains are always kind of looking for purpose and value, you know? Like he gives this example of how we see a chair. We don't just see object. We instantly think a place to sit, something to benefit us. It's like our brains are hardwired to ask, okay, what's in it for me?
It's honestly, isn't that kind of true? Even if we don't want to admit it all the time.
Mm-hmm. And it gets even better. He brings up Egyptian plovers and crocodiles. You know, the plover cleans the croc's teeth, gets a little meal, and the croc gets a dental hygiene session. Win-win. It's this natural transaction that apparently our brains are still kind of obsessed with, even like thousands of years later. It's wild, right? I mean, I never thought about it quite like that. But how does this whole transactional thing play out in our lives today, especially with something as complex as having, well, kids?
That's the core question here, isn't it? And what's really fascinating is that for most of human history, children did offer very clear transactional benefits. Think about hunter-gatherer societies, farming communities, more kids meant more hands to help out, hunting, gathering, taking care of things. Children were essential for survival, basically. But here's where it gets interesting. Our modern urban lives. Total shift from that. We've got grocery stores, social safety net systems our ancestors couldn't have imagined. Children aren't an economic necessity the same way they once were.
So are our brains kind of lagging behind? Like we're trying to make these huge life decisions with outdated software in a way.
It's a compelling argument for sure. It makes you wonder if that's part of why we struggle to reconcile, our deeply ingrained biological programming with the realities of the world we live in now.
And that brings us to what might be the most thought-provoking line in this whole article. He writes, and I'm quoting here, by the way, our selfish brains look around and go, why would we need children? I mean, whoa, right. Talk about a gut punch. And he even talks about how, as a father himself, he felt this pressure to justify his own child's existence. It's like even subconsciously, his brain was running the numbers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. It's like this very primal cost-benefit analysis, even if we don't realize it's happening.
Exactly.
And it's not that people are, heartless or they don't care about kids. It's that the world's a very different place now. Those old instincts, they don't always line up.
Especially when you think about the cost of actually raising kids these days. Education, healthcare, just the sheer logistics of it all. It's a lot.
It is. And we can't forget about opportunity cost either. The career paths people might put on hold, the personal freedoms that, get a little trickier to navigate. These are real factors that people weigh, maybe more heavily now than ever before, right?
Totally. So we've got these ancient brains trying to make sense of a modern world. No wonder things feel a little, out of whack sometimes. It makes you wonder, have you ever seen this transactional thinking play out in your own life or even just made you think differently about your own choices? Okay, so we've got this selfish brain thing. We've got the modern world. It's a lot. But here's where the article gets interesting, to say the least. The author actually proposes a solution, I guess. And it's a bit out there. He suggests we need to move people back to land. And I'm not talking about a weekend getaway. I'm talking full on encourage a mass exodus from cities back to a more, rural life.
Wow. Okay, so back to the land, literally.
Literally.
Yeah.
His argument is that if people are more connected to food production, to self-sufficiency, larger families, they just start to make more sense again, practically, and to those transactional brains of ours.
I mean, it's definitely a bold idea. And I can see the romantic appeal, the simplicity, the connection to nature, passing down those skills to your kids. It has a certain storybook quality to it.
Totally. And I'm guessing you were thinking this too. Could it actually work? We're talking about, centuries of societal shifts here?
Exactly. Cities exist for a reason. Right? They're hubs of opportunity, diversity, culture, even with the best intentions, forcing people back to the land. It just brings up so many questions.
Right. Is it even feasible on a large scale? What about people who actually, thrive in an urban environment?
Not to mention, would it even actually solve the declining birth rate problem?
That's what I was thinking.
because it's complex, right? It's not just about like economics, it's social norms, access to education, women's rights. It's a whole bunch of things.
Totally. It's like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle with like half the pieces missing.
Yeah.
But, even if this specific idea isn't like the answer, I do think it's valuable in how it makes us think differently about the issue.
Absolutely. It challenges our assumptions about why people choose to have children or not have children.
Yeah. And maybe, even if it makes us a little uncomfortable, maybe that discomfort is a good thing. It means we're actually like engaging with the complexity of it all.
Exactly. And maybe by understanding those connections between like our brains and our history and the world we live in now, maybe, just maybe, we can create societies where families, however they look, feel supported and valued and empowered.
That's a great point to end on. Food for thought, right? What do our brains really want, and how do we create societies that work with that, not against it?
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this thought-provoking journey, and be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the fascinating stuff we talked about today. Until next time, keep those brains curious.
Hey everyone, welcome.